Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on STEM internships and work-based learning opportunities in Massachusetts. I'm Alexis Leon, the Director of Policy at the Rennie Center for Education Research and Policy. Before we get started in our webinar today, I do want to take a quick moment to thank the Lindy Family Foundation for their generous support, which made this project and today's discussion possible. STEM internships and work-based learning experiences are critical for preparing students to navigate their future academic and career pathways. When we set out to begin this project that we'll be discussing today, our hope was to conduct research, identify effective practices, and a few model programs to then discuss ways of expanding and scaling a model program across the state. What can happen often in research is that as we progress through our work, our findings shifted the original direction of the project. What we found were pockets of success across the state, a constellation of programs or initiatives that were doing excellent work, but were extraordinarily dependent on the passion, dedication, and focus of a single staff member or a small team, not a system of supports and opportunities to replicate. Our hope today is to lift up some of those leaders and best practices through our panel discussion, to then look ahead for a vision of what is possible to expand access to these opportunities to all high school students in the Commonwealth. I'll briefly review our findings from our research, and we'll leave the majority of our time today to hear from our distinguished panel of experts. Before we dive in, we wanted to take a moment to norm on how we'll be defining the types of experiences we'll be talking about today. One of the first things we learned in doing this research was that the way leaders across education and workforce sectors defined work-based learning and internship experiences varied widely. The chart displayed here is based on definitions provided by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, outlining work-based learning as a spectrum from self-discovery activities in middle school on the left, all the way to immersive experiences, preparing students for post-secondary education and career choices. Our research that we'll be discussing today focuses on analyzing state-funded, high school-focused career immersion activities that bridge classroom learning and real-world application. Massachusetts has made significant strides in expanding STEM-focused pathways in the past 5 to 10 years. We focused our research on the following state-designated and funded programs that rose to the top of our research due to either the scale of the program or large funding opportunities for schools and students across the Commonwealth. First, we looked at Connecting Activities, the largest state-funded internship initiative in Massachusetts, linking schools with businesses to offer structured work-based learning opportunities. Next, we looked at regional STEM networks, partnerships between education, industry, and community organizations to facilitate STEM opportunities and activities locally. We then looked at state-designated STEM pathway programs. These are programs that offer STEM-specific academic and immersive work-based learning opportunities through things like capstone projects or internship programs, including programs like the Innovation Career Pathways Program, career technical education, vocational technical education programs, and some facets of early college programs across the Commonwealth. Last, we looked at quasi-public organizations, so things like the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center or the Mass Clean Energy Center, who offer critical paid internship opportunities for underserved students. And we'll hear from leaders in these programs shortly. We do want to take a minute, though, to understand the student perspective as we're discussing this key sector. So turning to the Rennie Center's data dashboard here, we're looking at our College and Career Pathways tab. If we zoom into the bottom center graph, this looks at trends in students' post-graduation plans, and we can see over the past several years, there's been a notable increase in high school seniors planning to enter the workforce directly upon graduation. In 2017, only about 8.7% of graduates were indicating their plans to immediately join the workforce. But by 2023, that number had grown significantly to 13.8%. This shift underscores the importance of aligning educational pathways with students' evolving aspirations. Many students are seeking hands-on, real-world experiences that help them transition smoothly from high school to career. Expanding internships and work-based learning that are relevant, applicable, and valuable. By creating a stronger bridge between education and industry, we can better support these students in achieving their goals while addressing workforce demands in critical sectors. Looking first to strengths that we found, Massachusetts has cultivated strong foundations in STEM internships and work-based learning, showcasing several promising practices. First, programs like the Cape Cod Regional STEM Network excel in providing accessible and reliable communication, you can see here to the picture on the right, offering clear, up-to-date resources that connect students, educators, and employers with high-quality opportunities. Mentorship plays a critical role in programs like the Metro West STEM Education Network's Perspectives of Earth program, where students gain professional skills and confidence through paid, hands-on STEM internships. We also see adaptable and ready-to-use resources in state programs like the Massachusetts Innovation Career Pathways website, which provides toolkits and guidance for educators and students that are attempting to navigate these pathways. Additionally, some programs are developing standards and metrics to ensure consistency and measure success, a necessary step to scale impactful opportunities statewide. Despite these strengths, significant challenges remain that hinder equity and scalability. We found logistical barriers, such as transportation issues, scheduling conflicts, and inconsistent funding, disproportionately affecting students in rural and underserved communities. Institutional collaboration and coordination often fall short, with schools, regional networks, and employers operating in silos, limiting the reach and effectiveness of these programs. There's also variability in the quality and flexibility of pathway options, leaving some students with limited or inconsistent experiences. And finally, a lack of transparency and accessible information about available opportunities makes it challenging for students, families, and educators to navigate and apply for these programs effectively. So to address these gaps and build on current strengths and enormous potential across the Commonwealth right now, we propose 4 key recommendations. First, create a centralized hub of information and opportunities to streamline access to all statewide STEM opportunities. Second, implement credentialing, establish consistent quality standards and recognition for internships and work-based learning opportunities across the state. Foster regional collaboration, and really strengthen partnerships between schools, employers, and regional networks to lean into each of those strengths in each of those sectors. Unify pathway processes. So simplify navigation and expand opportunities for students, as well as making the application and implementation process smoother and more efficient for school staff. A student should not be limited to just the opportunities that may exist in their school or their community, nor should they have to choose between immersive STEM experiences and access to post-secondary academic courses. Our students should have access to and information about all of the experiences available to them. So stay tuned to learn more about how the Rennie Center will be researching and testing some of these strategies in the coming year through our R&D labs. We look forward to you hearing more about this in our work together. So to continue this discussion, we are excited to have a distinguished panel of experts with us today and some of my dear friends in this work who bring a wealth of experience in STEM education, workforce development, and regional collaboration. So first, we have Dr. Irene Porro, Director of the McAuliffe Center for Integrated Science Learning and the Metro West STEM Regional Network Manager. Next, we have Ryan Madawar, Executive Vice President of Educational Partnerships and Workforce Investments at the Massachusetts Life Sciences Center. And last but not least, we have Tanya Baez, the Work-Based Learning Manager at the Dearborn STEM Academy and Innovation Career Pathways Peer Ambassador, excuse me. And today's panel will be moderated by the Rennie Center's Dr. Chad D'Entremont, our Executive Director. So thank you all for listening. I'll turn it over to Chad to kick off our panel.
Great. Thank you, Alexis. I appreciate the overview of the research and the great presentation. Also want to welcome our panelists and say thank you. We do have a tradition at the Rennie Center of going light on bios and heavy on content because we think that's what the audience wants to hear and learn about. But as I like to joke, if you all weren't doing fantastic work, we would have invited you here. So there's much to learn, and we're very excited about that. And I think if I can pull one headline out from what Alexis shared is there are tremendous strengths in our educational system to support work-based learning. And building from that gives us a real opportunity to have a more aligned, comprehensive, and systemic approach to doing this statewide. So let's do some level setting, learn about your programs before we get into all of the strengths and the challenges. And Tanya, I want to start with you. There's a logic in my head of getting school-based and then expanding outward. So can you talk a little bit more about the Dearborn STEM Academy and in particular, how you go about aligning career pathways work to support that area of learning for students in ways that matches their overall educational aspirations?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Tanya Baez. So happy to be here. Um, Here at the Dearborn, we have three pathways. We have health and life science, engineering, computer science. I am so lucky to be working alongside my colleague, Corey Allen, who is the Director of Industry Partnerships. So he and I work together to really look at the scope and sequence of um, the alignment between 6 through 12 and the experiences that students are embarking on, and really supporting students in choosing their path, exploring options, being open to all the resources available, and working together with us in order to figure out a pathway and then what's next.
All right, thank you, Tanya. Ryan, let me come to you next. Same basic question. Want to learn a little bit more about your program. And I think the Life Sciences Center is a great example of fostering strong partnerships between schools and STEM employers. So can you lean into that a little bit as you describe the work that you do?
Yeah, thank you, Chad, and thank you, Alexis, for having me today, including me in this very important conversation. The Massachusetts Life Sciences Center is a quasi-public state agency that's really tasked with implementing the Life Sciences Initiative. And so we make investments all across the state to support the life sciences ecosystem. But a big part of our mission is workforce development because we can't grow the life sciences industry here in the state if we don't have a robust workforce pipeline, a robust and diverse workforce pipeline. So we created a number of programs to address some of the workforce gaps, including internships, which we found to be absolutely critical with training the next generation and getting them with the exposure that they need to life sciences industry. And so one of our programs is the High School Apprenticeship Challenge, which we created back in 2016, excuse me, at a time when there were very few opportunities for high school students, particularly in biotech and medtech. So we were up against a lot of pushback from industry. And so what we decided to do was come up with, we designed the program so that we were addressing some of these challenges. With the first being the funding, right? So we fund the internships on behalf of the employers. We also, we listened to our employer partners, and some of their concerns about hiring high school students for internships were that A, they didn't have the skills and they wouldn't be able to add any value, and B, that they didn't have the maturity level, to work in a life sciences setting. So we decided to tackle that head on, and we created the program with two components. The first being a pre-internship training program that provided not just the technical skills, but also professional skills development as well. Which supported students in preparing them for a professional workplace experience that for many of these students they didn't have that type of opportunity prior. So and so we're very pleased. We started with just a handful of internships in that first pilot year, and we are now at 170 internships a year. And we have a large number of employers all across the state. So the program is extremely successful, and I'm looking forward to diving deeper into what makes the program so successful and some of the lessons that we've learned.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate that. An impressive number. Irani, let me come to you next, and a little setup here. We know that when we're talking about work-based learning and internship, there's lots of schools, there's lots of employers, there's lots of nonprofits that are looking to lend support, lots of dots to connect, right? That's where a line system or a network comes in. So, please take a moment to tell us about the McCullough Center, but really, can you then shape us our understanding of what the Metro West STEM network does and how you're connecting all those dots?
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. So I've been the director of the Krista McCullough Center for Integrated Science Learning for more than 10 years now, 10 and a half years. And as such, I inherited this role of being the manager of the Metro West STEM Education Network. Since 2007 has been hubbed, at Framingham State University, where the McCullough Center is. So it's very interesting that under, this umbrella, under my role as director of the center, I also took on the role of managing the regional STEM the STEM network, because the synergy is incredible. And often, when I present, I have to say, well, I'm wearing one hat or the other hat. Often I'm wearing both hats at the same time, because the Macaulay Centers offer a physical space and physical facilities where some of the MSCN programs, for example, are implemented. We also share some of the staff that supports the programs and promoted by Metro West STEM Education Network. So we are one of 9 regional networks, and we are all charged in a very individual and independent way, but we are all charged to help fulfill the goals of the Massachusetts STEM Council, which are obviously very clearly shaped around STEM workforce development. The way we particularly take on that role is by certainly fulfill the requirements in the context of Massachusetts STEM Week every October. But again, we really look at that, not just at the level of implementing day-long activities or classroom activities, which we welcome, but they really see how the Massachusetts STEM Week can be the starting point often for long-term partnership or long-term initiatives. And so that's how, for example, 5 years ago, we really at STEM Week, we had then Lieutenant Governor Polito formally coming to help us launch one of the programs that we're talking in this context, which is Perspectives of Earth. At that time was a team mentorship program, since then evolved into an internship program as well, right? So again, the Metro STEM Education Network has really provided the context, has really been providing the space to be a catalyst to forge collaborations among the employers, the schools, the nonprofits, and they all come together. We offer the physical space, as I said before, but also the management, if you want, infrastructure to coordinate an internship program that every summer sees between 12 and 15 students, high school students involved in the internship. However, every spring, up to 50 students come for what we call the training sessions, right? So really, we offer, Ryan mentioned some of the issues. I know I'm already jumping the issues. So we're trying to offer that bridge between where the students are as a high school students and where they need to be able to take advantage of a great internship opportunities that employers provide.
Right. Oh, thank you. And you transitioned us nicely. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges, because again, I think one of the things we're hoping to accomplish in today's conversation is think about how areas of strength in what programs are doing can point the way towards a more systemic approach to work-based learning. Envisioning a moment when every student in Massachusetts has an opportunity for work-based learning, regardless of what school they attend or what their educational pathway may be. So let's talk challenges. One thing, Irene, if I can stay with you, is to think about accessibility, and particularly issues around transportation and equitable participation in programs, and the way the network can help alleviate those concerns. Can you talk a little bit about how you address accessibility for students to work-based learning?
Yes, and thank you for saying how you address and not how you solved it. I don't pretend to have solved that. But let's start accessibility first in general terms. So through the network, we have from the beginning the opportunity to participate, to partner, and to engage with multiple school districts in the region. And that was important, right? Because we are a center at the university. We don't have necessarily an audience, right? Already we built it. But by partnering directly through, again, the network with specific school districts, and in our case, for example, at this moment, we work with Milford, Framingham, and Marlborough schools, not just comprehensive high schools, any school that is operates in those towns. And again, the network gave us the opportunity to work directly with the school districts, which we know serve a very diverse and in many cases an underserved population. And so really by working directly with the school districts, we provide all kind of, if you want, communication materials, supports, and webinar, and the opportunity we go and visit, but it has to work in collaboration with the schools. We wouldn't be able to reach the students. Otherwise, sure, you can make a flyer or send, some kind of social media material, but by working directly with the counselors, right? So just yesterday, I was in 2 different webinars with our liaisons at the schools, right? So the network has provided that opportunity to bring us together. The program was designed with the input of various representatives from different districts. So in that way, I have to say, we've been very successful in really recruiting a very diverse group of students. In all respects, socioeconomic, race and ethnicity, interest as well, right? Because we make very clear that academic prerequisites are not required to participate in our training sessions, and then the first exposure to a program. And if the students want to continue, they continue in the summer. So that, again, is still an issue because, again, for example, from a point of view of the schools, they expect the program being offered at the university be more academic oriented. And so often I have to explain, of course, if that's where the students want to go, we'll support them, but that is not a requirement, right? We saw in a report, a number of students are planning to enter the workforce right after high school is increasing. We do address the needs of those students by putting them directly in touch with employers. The other main barrier is transportation. And that, again, the way we are creatively trying to not solve, but address it is, again, being one place where the students come to us. And instead of having to go to individually to multiple locations throughout the region, they all come to Framingham State. I'm sorry to say that Metro West is not famous for its public transportation system. And though there is something, it's really hard for our students to navigate that. But having one central location, often they carpool, parents come together. We offer programs on Saturdays where parents are able to come, but it is a major barrier. Just as a note, we have students that are so committed to the program that Uber in and Uber out. And that's really, the high school kids shouldn't take an Uber to come to an enrichment program like this, right? But to a testimony to their commitment, they are willing to do that. And I think that's, again, we are trying to work around this issue, but it's still a major barrier.
Right. Thank you for laying that all out. And, I heard a number of important things, from setting common goals to coordinating activities to helping raise awareness of options, particularly those that orient students towards career opportunities. Tanya, let me come to you, because you're seeing this at a school level and, sort of executing some of those strategies that Irene is trying to coordinate, and can see it from the lens of a particular individual student's experience. Can you speak to that, and how you think about helping students manage accessibility issues and setting them up for success?
Definitely. So as a work-based learning manager, I oversee programming that has to do specifically with workforce development for students in 11th and 12th grade. I've had the privilege to work with a number of students, and luckily this summer we had about 85 students that were actively participating in a number of different programming that have to do with workforce development. Some of the barriers, as we mentioned, is transportation. Also students talking about transferable skills and really trying to articulate their experiences in the classroom when they're interviewing. And that has been something that at the Dearborn we've been working with students to start creating their resumes in 10th grade so that they're able to write down all their experiences. They're able to really reflect on their experiences so that when they're in interviews, when they graduate, they're able to really make the connection. With funding, it has also been a challenge because of the transportation. Some of our students have to get an Uber, like we mentioned before. And luckily, the barrier is not as high here in Boston because students have their Charlie card that they're able to go to different locations. But I think with the in order to solve the issue, I think also when we apply for STEM grants and funding, the availability for the funding, instead of it being just half of the school year, which usually we get funding in February through August. My hope at some point is that they have the opportunity for us to apply for grant and funding earlier in order for us to set up students for success when it comes to transportation. Where are they going? Are we able to pay the students for their experiences? Are we able to fund for them to take an Uber from Boston to Waltham in order for them to meet with their mentors? So there's a lot of brainstorming that comes. There's a lot of upfront conversations that we have to have with partners about the barriers that are coming across. And we've been really successful in the means of having those conversations straightforward from the beginning. And we also have partners sign an MOU to take 2 rounds of students, because we know that the first round, there's going to be lots of learning curves. There's going to be a lot of barriers, but in order for us to really think about our partners, think about our students, and how everyone can have a good experience, we're trying to lay the land before everyone explores.
Right. And I love how you're thinking about what is the commitment for sustained success as you dig in on this work. And I want to stick with that notion of success, Ryan, as I come to you. I believe, and I apologize, a lot of great ideas flying around, but I believe you mentioned the High School Apprenticeship Challenge already in your opening comments. And I want to highlight that as a great example of success and dig in a little bit more. Can you just describe that program more fully and specifically how it goes about creating opportunities for underrepresented students to participate in work-based learning?
Yeah, as I mentioned at the outset, when we first launched the program, we didn't really know what to expect. We didn't know what the appetite was from industry for hiring high school students, but we were willing to roll the dice and take a chance. We had a lot of conversations with our industry partners, with our research institution partners, and what we ended up discovering was that there were a lot of legal restrictions within our life sciences companies when it came to hiring minors. And so anyone under 18, it was almost kind of it was a non-starter, right? So we pushed and pushed and pushed, and unfortunately we were not able to get a lot of companies on board. This program is actually kind of an offshoot of a long-standing existing program we have for college students. So we were already starting kind of on the shoulders of that program, and we had a lot of employer partners that hired college interns regularly, but they were just not ready to take that next step into hiring high school students. And so we had conversations with legal teams and all of that. And unfortunately, there were just a small handful that were willing to do that. Where we found success was with our research institutions. So our hospitals, our academic institutions that have research labs, and we reached out to faculty, reached out to a lot of the our partners there, and they didn't have existing internship programs in most cases for high school students, but they were willing to work with us to establish something, especially because the funding was available for that, right? So that's where we were able to use the resources that we had to help really start something new. And it started small, but I have to say a lot of our success is due to these research institutions that have stepped up in extraordinary ways, built entire programs, have cohorts now around these internship opportunities for high school students. And so that's been, I think, a huge reason behind our success. And but we also recognize that a lot of Massachusetts's premier research institutions are centered in and around Boston. And Cambridge. So what we were finding was that a lot of our internships were located there, and unfortunately, that's not great for a lot of the students that are located out in western and central parts of the state, and north and south shore. So we reached out to our some of our academic institutions that have research labs, mostly the UMass system, and it was not easy at first, logistically, to get this up and running. But I have to say now, I'm so glad that we put in all that effort to make something happen, because right now our largest employer partners are UMass Dartmouth, UMass Lowell, and UMass Amherst, and UMass Chan Medical School in Worcester, as well as WPI, and so many others all across the state, which now have established high school cohorts, internship cohorts, that were really born out of this program. And they can't do it without the funding that we have available to us from the state to be able to do this. So but in terms of, I don't want to, say that it's all been roses. There have been significant challenges as well, because and I'll just use one example. So one of our pre-internship training cohorts is with training partnerships is with Brockton High School. And Brockton, students have been wonderful in terms of just being resourceful, getting to Boston, Cambridge, doing the, but unfortunately, there are students that just do not have the ability to drive down to UMass Dartmouth, right, to do their internship. So this year we were flexible with our funding, and we funded a bus, a van, to be able to transport about 10 students from Brockton down to UMass Dartmouth. That's not a short drive, and it's not a cheap arrangement with the company that the bus company through the district, and logistically managing all of that was a headache. I'll be totally transparent with you, but I'm glad that we did it, and we learned a lot from that. And I think next year it's going to go a lot smoother. But it really was eye-opening to us that we need to be more flexible with our funding, and not just have funding available for wages to subsidize the internships, the internship costs for the employers, but also have the funding for the transportation, and just accept the fact that it's not cheap, but it's necessary, because without that funding, without that bus, those students would not have had a potentially life-changing internship experience at UMass Dartmouth.
Got it. Right. Thank you, Ryan. Tanya, I'm going to flip back to you real quick, because I want to make sure that we don't take the student perspective as a given, right? I think there's an assumption that I've created in this conversation of like, oh, these programs are beneficial for students, so wouldn't they love them? But can you talk about the value that you see that students may have in participating in a work-based learning experience? And are there any innovative approaches you use to help them be motivated to explore career options, to stay engaged in programs? What are the students getting out of it? How do they feel about it?
So, as I had mentioned before, me and my colleague, Director of Industry Partners, Corey Allen, we sit down and strategically plan out what does it look like from 6 to 12, and what experiences are students going to embark on that is going to ignite their curiosity, their want to be able to explore these options. So in every grade level, we have partnerships with National Grid. We're coming up with Eversource, and we have a number of standing partners that are interested in coming into the classrooms and really bridging that gap between academic and workforce development, and what does that look like. And these experiences are so important because our students are able to leave with a network of professionals that they actually have a conversation with and communicate with. They're able to really reflect on their experiences, and in 7th grade, be like, I'm really interested in exploring health and life science. And then in 10th grade, say it's okay, like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to explore engineering. So we give students the possibility to explore all options. And then when they secure a pathway that they want to take on, we help them to embark on in these experiences that will make the overall internship goal a success, right? Our students feel like they are not only valued, but they feel like they have a relationship. They see the connection between the academics and workforce development, and they see our partners inside the classroom. So it makes it familiar, it makes it safe. And it has been really a game changer with our partners and also with our students, for them feeling valued, for them being able to see the vision and hold it and take ownership of it, which is really good.
Thank you for sharing. Renee, if I may come to you, I'm thinking about also the employer's perspective, and I think you're probably best positioned to talk to this point. So what do they get out of it? What do you see employers responding to when they're engaging with students in work-based learning, and how does your STEM network make that all happen for them?
And if I may, because both Ryan and Tanya provided some elements that will lead to that in terms of our perspective, right? We always figure that we will bring the students and the employer in one place, because benefits the students, as I said before, but also the employers. So some of the problems that Ryan highlighted very well, I think life sciences are more barriers than others in working with minors, but all employers have that kind of problems, right? So I think that institutions like us, and Ryan already highlighted that, higher educations, really we have the advantage of being able to work with the younger audience in a context that is legal and is safe. And it still meets by bringing the employers to the program, instead of the students having to go to employers, they still participate in that experience of meeting the professionals, sharing with them, the mentoring still happens there. I would say that the employers in our case have been very generous with their time, their ideas. At first, they need to understand what's going on, right? Because again, it's a different model, right? So the first thing, to be honest, they always think that we're asking for money. Now, money is always welcome. Funding is always welcome, but what we value the most is their expertise and their time. And so in our case, the model is really to focus every year on 3-4 specific projects that are very much connected to the needs of the community. So that's another way to connect the youth to something that is meaningful to them. We work in a climate critical workforce area, if you want. So, well, how do we make our community greener from a point of view of energy use or from a point of view of green space, you name what the topic might be. So for each project, we engage specific employers that have expertise in that area, and they have an interest to provide exposure and ideally, a career pathway opportunity to young people because they have a need for the future, especially, again, in a climate critical area. For example, we start working in the area of community solar. We're an organization that specifically wants to bring solar energy to people who usually wouldn't have access because they don't live in a building they own. They don't have a roof where they can put the solar panels, for example, right? They are specifically working in Framingham and working with this company, this organization, and the city of Framingham. Students were exposed to real professionals committed to work in their own town to make a green and clean solution, provide a clean solution for their town. So I think when employers understand that this is beneficial to them because it helps introduce often an area of work that their parents, even counselors in schools are not aware. We offer a venue for them to connect and introduce these new jobs and new job opportunities. But also it's a way to show what the work they do, what are the products they have to share in various ways, right? We've been working with organizations called HEAT that is been promoting geothermal networks. Framingham is the first geothermal network in the country. We're famous, right? I didn't know that they needed drillers, but the people who have to drill these very deep holes, boreholes, to really install this network. That's a very important job for the sector. Doesn't require a college degree to be involved in that. But I personally didn't know that. I think many people didn't know. Now, through the partnership with us, the people in the geothermal network industry can really share what their needs for the workforce are, and also the ways how high school graduates, in this case, can access with job opportunities, right? So it's been, like Ryan was saying before, I wouldn't say that it's always easy. There is a lot of reaching out and connecting and individual conversation with various employers. But I have to say, the response usually is, when they understand what we are doing, is really positive because they see an immediate advantage to the work they do without the barriers of having to not just bring students in their buildings, but often really find the staff that has the skills and the time to work in a meaningful way with these high school kids. So I think just as a final note to that, this interaction with employers brought up to a point where some of them who came to the final presentation, our students were impressed with the skills that the students developed. And they said, you need to develop a credentials program, which I'm very happy to see is one of your recommendations, right? And that's what, starting this year, we are doing. So the industry is also going to help with this credential process, but it's something that, an idea that they generated and we are incorporating now.
Yeah, no, that's so helpful. And one of the things I hear you saying is that in formalizing the relationships between industry and students through schools, there's a constant learning there that not only can industry better adapt to bring students in a way that benefits businesses because they are seeing future employees, they are seeing a population with more work-based ready skills, but also schools are learning and what are the opportunities out there and how can we begin to shift programming and instruction to better prepare students for the world that they're going to enter into. I do want to make a note for our audience out there. There is a Q&A function. You'll find it if you're familiar with Zoom. If not, just poke around a little bit with your cursor. Feel free to ask questions of the audience. We're scheduled to go till 11 o'clock, so we have plenty of time and certainly welcome them. I'm going to forge forward. I have a ton of questions I can continue to ask, but hopefully we'll get some from the audience. And Ryan, I want to come back to you and start thinking about scaling. And I'm starting with you because, you sort of mentioned connecting, internships in Boston and Cambridge area, but what does that mean for Central Mass? What does that mean for Western Mass and some of the complications there? How do you think about going about scaling programming so it's accessible to all students? Are there ways that the private sector can play a more explicit role in helping to make this happen?
Yeah, great question, Chad. So we have scaled significantly over the years, but there's more we can do. One of the it- so one of the the big reasons for our scaling is we were fortunate enough to receive some supplementary funding from the Executive Office of Education as part of the Workforce Skills Cabinet's initiative, the STEM at Work initiative. You might be familiar with that. It's about was $500,000 over 3 years that we were able to use, which really allowed us to have more additional resources in order to increase the size of the cohorts with a lot of our industry and research institution partners. So we were fortunate to receive that. It doesn't look like that funding will be available going forward. So we have to think creatively about how we can continue to maintain the level that we're at in terms of the scale, and also expand the program's reach even more so. We've increased the number of pre-internship training programs that we offer from 5 to 8 just in the past year, and that's geographical expansion as well. We have 2 cohorts in Worcester now, and so there's a lot of and those pre-internship or internship readiness programs, if you will, are absolutely critical because they provide a direct pathway for a lot of these students into internship placements because we form partnerships with host organizations that essentially reserve internship slots for students coming up through those programs. And we help foster those relationships, and it's a really great way for students to get into internships. The alternative is students apply through our website, and companies and other organizations that are partnering with us will review resumes through a database. And so that's a lot of students get internships that way, but you're more likely to get an internship if you're going through one of these pre-internship programs. So the more that we can bring those programs to different parts of the state, the more opportunities we'll be able to offer them. So funding is one way that will absolutely help us scale. The other has to do with I also want to touch on increasing diversity and underrepresented students in these programs, because that's one thing I do want to make sure that I'm noting for the audience is when in the early years of this program, we didn't have the diversity that we were hoping for. And so what we decided to do as of 2021 was actually modify our eligibility requirements so that only students that are enrolled at public low-income schools would be eligible for an internship. And we define low income as 25% or more of the student body, designated by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education as low income. So that's a term that they use. And so if the school meets that threshold, then their students are eligible to do internships through our program. And that has just has done wonders in terms of increasing opportunities for students of color and low-income students from all across the state, because they were, unfortunately, when we leave it up to the market, and companies historically are have not been inclined to hire somebody from a gateway city school, for example, versus somebody from a more affluent suburban high school, which was the trend that we were seeing early on. So and we also one of the things that we discovered in the early years of the program is some companies felt were hiring relatives of their employees. So somebody's nephew, somebody's, and even just somebody's neighbor, friends and family. And that's, we see that's common when it comes to high school internships. We see that across a lot of industries, and a lot of companies do that. And so we prohibited that. You're no longer allowed to hire anyone that's a relative of anyone at the anyone at the company. So that has also, so what that does is it opens up opportunities for students that were not on the radar for these companies previously. So that's another way that we're addressing, the issue with access for underrepresented youth. So I feel like I'm taking up too much time, so I'll stop there. But happy to go deeper if you'd like.
No, it's quite all right. And actually, I have a couple of quick follow-ups that from our audience that I'll ask you. But I do want to make the point. It's interesting about the challenge of the potential hiring of friends and family. Because on the one hand, and I want to frame this right way, totally agree with the steps you took and wanting to create a program that is accessible to everyone, particularly students who may not have those types of relationships. On the other hand, we know that in communities of privilege, that those types of relationships lead to opportunities all the time, which we call social capital. And I think one of the important things that this type of work-based programming can do is help students build social capital, build relationships out in their community with employers, with programs that eventually hopefully become mentors, become even friends, so they can then tap into that as they build their careers. Again, framing it correctly, doing it the right way so it's equitable and accessible to all, but recognizing how important building social capital is to a student and an individual's future prospects. Ryan, staying with you for a sec. Matt, you touched on this a little bit, but want to ask you deeper just to help clarify. Matt was interested in pre-internship preparation programs, and particularly just could you say a little bit more about how they're staffed and funded? There might be some interest in looking into that in Western Massachusetts.
Yes, and I believe you might be referring to Matt Rigney, who is
I am.
who I absolutely want to give a huge shout out to, because he has been a critical partner for us and another key to our success in terms of placements in Western Massachusetts. So his organization, the Collaborative for Educational Services, essentially does a lot of the groundwork for us, because that's not something that we do. It's not part of our program in terms of recruiting the students and prepping them and finding placements for them. And then providing additional funding support as well, and resources, wraparound services for those students. So we greatly appreciate that. We don't have a similar partnership in other parts of the state. So in terms of best practices, that's a great example, the work that Matt does, and I would love to see more of that in other parts of the state as well. So I just want to make sure that I'm noting that. And thank you, Matt, for that. Yeah, so we've been exploring. So we've each year we expand the number of internship readiness programs that we were able to offer. And so we're hoping to. I've always wanted to. I'm originally from Western Massachusetts. I've always wanted to have a program that like that in Western Massachusetts. But in order for us to do that, we need a training partner. We need, and so that could be a school. It could be a nonprofit organization that has that usually partners with, an academic. There has to be like a lab facility there that they can access, and so we would love to explore that. In terms of funding, that's generally around $40,000 to $50,000 per cohort that we're able to support. I'll just say in terms of what we currently offer, and I want to absolutely shout out our partners, the LEA project, and also BioBuilder and MedHigh out of WPI, as well as Digital Ready. So these are just examples of organizations that that operate these training programs. So we contract with them, and they offer the it's a different curriculum. It varies depending on the organization, but it does have to consist of some technical training. So they go into the lab, or they learn the technical skills. In most cases, it's not their first time pipetting or doing things like that. They would have done that also preferably in school, but this supplements that, and really with the focus of training them for a work-based learning experience. Like here's what you're gonna see, and when you go into MGH, what you're gonna with Dana-Farber Children's Hospital, and we're gonna prep you for that, so that when you go there, you feel like you have that you're ready, and you're not intimidated by what you're about to experience. And then also the professional skills development. So they help with resume writing, they help with interview skills, and other types of just professional demeanor, so that they are able to present well, and that's something that our employers appreciate, because, as I said at the outset, having a minor come into to that environment that's never had a professional job experience before can be challenging. So we want to make sure that it's going to be as successful and rewarding experience as possible for both parties.
Right. Well, thank you. I've got another question. I'm going to tweak it a little bit just to expand out the conversation again. So basic idea is we have an apprenticeship, we have a work-based learning experience that requires a student at some point to be placed with an employer to be hosted. Nuts and bolts. How does that happen? And it might be a little different from all of your perspectives, but Irene, if I can start with you first, how does that happen, the actual process of going about having a student placed with an employer to gain a work-based learning experience?
Right. Well, in our case, again, the experience happens at our own site. So again, the employers comes to the McCullough Center and works directly with the students there. So, for some people that wouldn't be the full experience. Now, with the addition of the credential program that we are introducing this summer, the idea is that the industry partners that are working with us on the credential program will immediately, of course, recognize the students who participate in the program. They may have already worked directly with them or not, but the credentials will show to them that they have developed those transferable and professional skills we've been talking about. They've been exposed to, in this case, to the clean energy of the green economy, projects that we have proposed. And so by recognizing the credentials, we will bring them on board. That is that. Our idea is to this pre-internship experience happening in a safe environment for both the youth and the employers. So the employers really manage to meet with multiple students and in a way, establish that relationship. And we had that happen in the past where then the student knows that there are these opportunities that follow, right? It's not a rigid process, it's very fluid. Because again, it's not just about the job, but it's also about the personality, the environment, the context. But again, with the credential the addition of the credentials, we will really have our employers will recognize that these are students that met certain steps in the process, and ideally they get extra points because of that, and employers will trust our work with them.
Thank you. Tanya, same basic question, and I'll apologize. Should have done it to Irene as well. I don't know how involved you are in this process, but from your perspective, a student at Dearborn, how do they actually get hosted by a site where they gain work-based learning experience?
Thank you for this question. It's so important. So I lead the work. At Dearborn, our goal, we have a 5-year goal that all 11th and 12th graders will be participating in internship program during their juniors and senior year. We're in year 3, and we have half the cohort, so we're on track. So the students and I push into the classrooms, and I build relationship with students, which is really key. So I establish relationships with the students, and then we open the door for partners to include job postings in their application process so that students are able to explore their options. I have a conversation with students and advise on, are we trying to learn soft skills? Is it just, how to answer a telephone? Is it basic, how to use the copier, right? How to write an email, which is really important, but a lot of students have never come across building those skills. So it's an ongoing conversation, and then we place students based on what they want to learn. What do they want to explore? We have a career interest survey that we also send out to students at the beginning of the year, where they're able to determine the skills that they want to build on or, have. We also target students based on their availability, right? A lot of competing factors are after school programming, if they have to participate in extracurricular activities and, help at home. And we've actually tweaked our model so that we have an internship session that runs during February and April vacation, so that students are able to still participate in workforce development training and all these experiences. They do 40 hours February break, they do 40 hours April break, and then we do 20 hybrid. And then they reflect on their experience. And it has been really successful, specifically when we were in COVID. But on top of it too, for students that are taking early college classes, for students that, have different priorities, but still want to make space and time for them to explore their options. And it has been really, really good and really beneficial for our students.
May I express something Tanya said? This idea, we had to be creative to provide different spaces and times when students can engage in these kind of activities. We do it on weekends. Even the summer in terms of, when we talk about accessibility, we have to think about all the competing, not just interests, but needs and tasks that our students need to fulfill. So for us, moving from regular week activities to weekends, it was a huge change in the positive direction, but it's a huge also commitment, right? Because my staff work 6 days a week when we do the program. That's okay though, because it's worth it. The employers need to engage with us on weekends. See, it's really a different way of approaching the same activity, but has to be approached in a different way if we truly care about accessibility.
Right. And I just wanted to note that it has to be intentional. It can't be something that we're just coming up with a fly. We need to be proactive and make sure that we're setting the space for when the students are there, that they feel like, okay, this is a structure that I feel I recognize and I'm able to thrive because I have people and, mentors that see the vision and see that I'm capable and able to.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it. And Ryan, thank you. I saw that you answered Paul's question directly in the Q&A function and making note of sort of how you advertise the programming, but that MLSC doesn't get involved in direct matchmaking. So thank you for that answer. We are almost at time. I'm going to bring us to a quick closeout lightning round, asking panelists a little challenge here for about 20 seconds or so. If you were to recommend one action that would help make STEM work-based learning opportunities more equitable and impactful, what would you recommend? How do we move forward and build a system? And I'll just open the floor, whoever feels like jumping in.
I really feel as though the school needs to set the land of like, what are the academics and what are we doing in the classrooms that is going to lead the work into workforce development. And that's like creating systems like partnership menu, where our mentors and partners are able to establish relationships with us. That doesn't necessarily mean internships because of their capacity, but that means doing a guest speaker series, holding a job shadow day, doing little things that make a bigger part of the bigger picture.
I would jump in. I have a list, but I'll stay with transportation because yes, we can come up with, Ryan says, great solution, but are temporary and funding dependent. We have to think long term. I would really want to engage all our administrations, the local administration, the state administration, with the improvement of public transportation, because it's not just for the students themselves, it's their families. Their families are not able to come and participate in many of the events. Their families themselves need good public transportation to go to work. We introduce with students to good jobs, and then they don't have the transportation to go and engage in the new professions. So it's real. I know it's a huge issue. I know that very well, but I think we have to start thinking those terms, and we will not solve the problem for today, but maybe in 5 or 6 years, we will have a better landscape.
And Ryan, last word.
I will just urge companies to open their doors, relax their restrictions on hiring high school students, and take a chance. And, we have some funding available to de-risk that.
Thank you. Well, I know we're at time, so I will be short, but want to give a profound thank you to the 3 of you. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your experience and moving this important conversation forward. Thank you so much. And to our audience out there, we are done wrapping up here with next steps. You can check out the STEM internships and work-based learning landscape analysis that led to this webinar on the Rennie Center's website. You can also use this QR code to go directly to the link. As Alexis mentioned, we are currently engaged in projects in both the Boston area and out in Western Mass in the Springfield area to start establishing work-based learning STEM networks through our R&D lab initiative. And if you'd like to learn more about that, feel free to reach out to the Rennie Center directly. My information, Alexis's information, general information is all on our website. We will stay engaged in this issue and looking forward to talking to everyone more soon. Thank you very much.